The night smelled of roses and silence. Anna sat alone on the edge of the bed, her bridal dress heavy like a crown of expectations. Outside, laughter still echoed from the wedding guests, the clinking of glasses, the fading music, the sound of a world celebrating love. But inside that quiet room, Anna's heart was beating too fast, too loud, as if warning her that life was about to change forever. Everyone had told her this night would be magical. The most special night of your life, they had said with knowing smiles. But no one told her about the fear, the trembling hands, the thousand questions that haunt a girl when she's alone in a room with destiny waiting behind a door. Was she ready? She didn't know. How can anyone be ready for something they've never lived before? For a love that asks you to surrender when your heart is still learning to trust? The clock ticked. The petals on the bed looked like little secrets scattered across white sheets. And then the door creaked open. He stepped in Y and her husband. The man she had just promised her life to, but barely knew. For a moment they just stared at each other. Two strangers bound by vows, standing on the edge of something sacred. His eyes searched hers, not with hunger, but with patience. And in that quiet gaze, she saw something unexpected. Kindness still. Her heart raced. Was he going to touch her? Was this the moment everyone whispered about? What if it hurt? What if she wasn't enough? Her thoughts tangled like ribbons around her fear. But then he spoke. "Anna," he said softly, "look at me." She did. "You don't have to be afraid." Something shifted in the air. A promise unspoken, a warmth rising like dawn after a long night. He didn't rush toward her. He didn't demand. He simply sat beside her, his presence calm, steady, and safe. And in that stillness, Anna realized this night wasn't about surrender. It was about trust. About two souls meeting for the first time, not in passion, but in understanding. The world outside faded. The noise disappeared. There was only the sound of her breathing, the soft rustle of her dress, and the quiet heartbeat of a man who wasn't there to conquer her, but to know her. And as the candlelight flickered across their faces, Anna realized something no one had told her. The first night isn't about fear or expectation. It's about learning that real love doesn't begin with touch. It begins with safety. It begins with kindness. And that night, as she looked into Ayan's eyes, Anna felt something she had never felt before. Not desire, not excitement, but peace. The kind of peace that tells you, this is where love begins. The echoes of celebration still lingered in the air, faint laughter, fading footsteps, the last whispers of a wedding that had painted every corner of Anna's day with gold and red. Yet now, as the doors closed behind the final guest and the music melted into silence, she sat in the center of her new world, surrounded by petals and perfume, trembling in a room that suddenly felt too large. The walls glowed with the soft light of candles. Shadows danced gently over curtains that swayed with the night breeze. On the bed lay a blanket of rose petals, carefully scattered as if someone believed beauty could calm the storm inside her chest. But beauty could not quiet fear. Not tonight. Anna clasped her hands together tightly, her fingers cold against each other. The weight of her bridal jewelry pressed against her skin like memories she couldn't shake. The dress that once made her feel like a princess now felt heavy, suffocating. Her heart beat like a drum, loud, uneven, restless. She had been told this night was special, sacred, something every girl should dream about. But what they never told her was how lonely it could feel to step into the unknown. Her mind was a swirl of voices, advice from relatives, teasing from friends, words wrapped in mystery. Be brave. Be gentle, be ready, but ready for what? For love, for pain, for surrender. Anna had never kissed a man before. She had never even held a hand in secret. Her heart had always been cautious, her life sheltered by tradition and quiet obedience. And now, here she was, a bride waiting in a room of petals, about to share her world with a man she barely knew. She wasn't afraid of him. Not truly. She was afraid of what she didn't understand, of what came next. A soft sound broke through her thoughts. The gentle creak of the door. Her breath caught. He stepped in slowly, his shadow stretching across the room before his figure did. Ayan, her husband. The man who had stood beside her at the altar, whose hand had trembled just slightly when he placed the ring on her finger. Tonight his face looked different, softer, quieter, touched by exhaustion and tenderness. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was alive, filled with 1,000 unsaid words, 1,000 invisible questions. Her eyes darted away first, falling to her lap, where her fingers twisted the edge of her shawl. He closed the door gently behind him and walked toward her, not with the heavy steps of demand, but with the careful pace of understanding. "Anna," he said softly. Her name and his voice felt different, not a command, but an invitation. She looked up, uncertain. The candlelight flickered across his face, revealing eyes that held no impatience, no hunger. Only kindness. Only calm. "You don't need to be afraid," he said. His tone was steady, warm, the kind of voice that made even silence feel safe. "Tonight isn't a test. It's just use talking, breathing, learning." Anna's lips parted, but no sound came. She had rehearsed what she might say all evening, polite words, nervous laughter, maybe a shy greeting, but now, with him standing there, everything vanished. Only her heartbeat remained. Ayan smiled gently and sat down beside her, leaving enough space so she didn't feel trapped. His presence filled the room, but not in a way that pressed against her. It simply existed, quiet, patient, waiting. "I know," he said softly. "Everyone talks about this night like it's supposed to be perfect, like it's something magical. But magic isn't forced, Anna, it's found. When two hearts stop pretending." Her eyes lifted again, drawn by the honesty in his tone. There was no arrogance in his posture, no expectation in his gaze. Just a man trying to understand the woman fate had placed beside him. "I don't want you to pretend," he continued. "Not tonight. Not ever." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She didn't know why she was crying, maybe relief, maybe fear, maybe both. Ayan noticed, but he didn't rush to wipe it away. He simply extended his hand, palm open, waiting. Slowly, cautiously, Anna placed her trembling hand in his dot, his fingers closed gently around hers, not to claim, but to comfort. Warmth spread from his touch, threading through her veins like the first light of dawn. "I will never hurt you," he whispered. "Not in word, not in touch. We'll move when you're ready." Not before. Anna's chest tightened. She had expected awkwardness, maybe even distance. But not this, not gentleness that made her feel seen. Not tenderness that asked for nothing in return. For the first time that night, she breathed deeply. They sat like that for a while, two strangers holding hands, letting silence do what words could not. The petals around them glowed softly under candlelight. Somewhere outside, the wind hummed through the trees. Inside, time slowed dot when Ayan spoke again. His voice was softer. "Can I tell you a secret?" Anna nodded faintly. "I was nervous too," he said with a small laugh. "I've waited all my life to meet someone I could trust. And now that you're here, I don't want to rush anything. I want our love to grow, not just happen." Something inside her shifted. The fear didn't vanish completely, but it softened, like snow melting under a warm sun. For the first time, she looked at him not as a stranger, but as a man who understood the language of care. He didn't ask for permission to touch her again. He didn't need to. His presence spoke louder than words. Anna smiled weakly through her tears. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "I know," he said. It's okay. We have a lifetime to turn fear into trust. That sentence settled deep in her heart. A lifetime. Not a moment, not a night, a lifetime. The candles flickered as if in agreement. Somewhere inside her, a door opened. A quiet acceptance, a fragile courage. She didn't move closer yet, but she didn't shrink away either. She let herself sit beside him, breathing the same air, sharing the same silence. In that stillness, Anna discovered something powerful. Love wasn't a storm of passion. It was the steady hand that held you through the trembling. It was the voice that told you to breathe when you forgot how. It was the kindness that waited when the world said rush. The petals on the bed remained untouched. But something invisible had begun to bloom between them. It wasn't desire. It was trust. And as the night stretched on, the girl who had entered that room in fear began to feel something new. Not boldness, not confidence, but peace. The kind of peace that told her she was safe. The kind of peace that whispered, this is how real love begins. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking every second of the silence that wrapped the room like a blanket. The night outside was deep and still. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Anna sat beside Ayan, her hand still in his. Her heart no longer racing, but learning a new rhythm, slower, steadier, calmer. For the first time since the wedding began, she felt she could breathe without pretending. Her thoughts drifted through the day, the laughter, the blessings, the endless smiles for photographs. Everyone had looked so happy. Everyone had called it her big day. But no one had asked how she truly felt when the veil came down. When the noise faded, when she stood before a door she had never opened before, and now, as Ayan's fingers rested gently over hers, she realized that what she had feared most wasn't the night, it was being misunderstood. Being treated like a duty, not a person. But Ayan didn't see her as a duty. He saw her as Anna, the girl with shy eyes and trembling hands. The woman who had stepped into a new world without a map, carrying only her hope and fear. He leaned back slightly, giving her space, and said softly, you don't have to rush. We can just talk. His voice was like the sound of rain after a long dry summer, gentle, cleansing. Anna nodded, her lips forming a small, uncertain smile. She wanted to speak, but the words felt trapped behind her chest. So she began slowly, her voice a whisper. I was scared, she confessed. Everyone kept telling me tonight is important, that I should be ready. But how can I be ready for something I don't understand? Ayan's eyes softened. You don't have to understand everything right away. Love isn't a lesson to memorize. It's something we learn together. She looked at him, surprised by the simplicity of his answer. In his words, there was no pressure, no expectation, only truth. He reached for a small cup of water from the table and offered it to her. Drink, he said with a smile. Your lips look dry. Anna hesitated, then took it. As the cool water touched her throat, she realized how thirsty she had been, not just for drink, but for kindness, for gentleness, for a love that didn't demand, but invited. They began to talk about the wedding, about their childhood, about little things that didn't matter and yet meant everything. Every word peeled away a layer of fear. Every laugh soft, cautious, felt like a bridge being built between two hearts that had been strangers just hours ago. I used to write letters to my future husband, Anna admitted shyly, her cheeks turning pink. I never knew who he would be. I just wrote what I felt about trust, about dreams. I wanted someone who would listen. Ayan smiled warmly. Then tonight I'll listen to every letter you ever wrote. She laughed, a small, pure sound, and in that laughter, the heaviness in the room began to lift. The candlelight danced brighter, as if the walls themselves were sighing in relief. As they spoke, Anna noticed things she hadn't before, the way Ayan's eyes crinkled when he smiled. The kindness in his tone, the calm strength in his posture. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply present, offering his truth without disguise, and slowly, her fear began to change shape. It became curiosity, it became warmth. At one point, as they sat in silence, Ayan looked at her and said, "Can I hold your hand again?" Anna's heart fluttered. He didn't just assume. He asked. She nodded, and he took her hand gently, tracing small circles over her palm. His touch wasn't bold or demanding. It was thoughtful, almost reverent, as if he was memorizing the shape of her courage. "You know," he whispered, "love is not about possession. It's about protection. I don't want to take anything from you. I want to build something with you." The words echoed through her heart like a promise she didn't know she had been waiting to hear. For years, Anna had been taught that a woman's worth was in how much she gave. But Ayan made her feel like she didn't have to give anything away to be loved. She just had to be herself. Tears welled up again, uninvited but sincere. She turned her face away, embarrassed. He noticed and gently said, "Hey, tears don't mean weakness. Sometimes they're just proof that your heart is alive." Anna took a deep breath. "I don't know why I'm crying." "Because for the first time," he said softly, "you feel safe." The truth of it hit her like a quiet wave. She had never felt this before, this mix of emotion, this strange blend of vulnerability and strength. And she realized something powerful. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time lost its meaning in that quiet room. The night outside deepened, but inside, the darkness felt warm, not cold. Two souls were learning each other, word by word, breath by breath. Ayan looked at her again, his eyes searching hers for permission before he spoke. "Anna, can I ask something?" "Yes. When you look at me, do you still feel afraid?" She paused. The fear was still there, but softer now, like a fading echo. "A little," she whispered. "But it's different. It doesn't hurt anymore." He smiled gently. "Then we're already halfway to love." Anna blinked, unsure how a single sentence could make her heart feel so full. They stayed like that, sitting close, their shoulders almost touching, their hearts speaking a language older than words. And in that space, something sacred bloomed, trust. Quiet and unspoken. It wasn't the grand, dramatic romance she had seen in movies. It was gentler, deeper. The kind of love that doesn't roar but hums, soft and steady. Like a melody only two people can hear. Before midnight, Ayan stood and offered his hand. "You must be tired. Let's rest. You don't have to do anything tonight. Just sleep. I'll be right here." Anna hesitated, not from fear, but from gratitude. She took his hand and let him guide her to the bed. As she lay down, still wrapped in her bridal shawl, Ayan sat beside her. He didn't reach for her. He simply brushed a loose strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "Good night." The gesture, so small, so gentle, broke the last piece of her fear. For the first time since the wedding began, Anna closed her eyes without worry. The room that had once felt heavy now felt like home. The man beside her wasn't a stranger anymore. He was her safe place, and his sleep slowly pulled her into dreams. One thought echoed softly in her heart. Love doesn't begin with desire. It begins with trust. And trust had finally found her. When dawn finally broke, it came softly, not with fire, but with light that crept gently across the curtains, touching the room with gold. The world outside had changed. The night had folded itself into memory, and the morning had come quietly, as if it knew something sacred had taken place. Anna stirred slowly, her lashes fluttering against the light. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The scent of roses still lingered. The candles had melted into pools of wax. and the petals had scattered around her like tiny promises. Then, as she turned her head, she saw him .ay and he was asleep beside her, his breathing calm, steady, like the rhythm of safety. One arm rested near her shoulder, as if even in sleep, he was guarding her peace. Anna watched him for a while, her heart full of a tenderness she couldn't describe. She thought of the night before, the fear that had once wrapped itself around her chest. And the way his voice had slowly untied every knot. There had been no rush. No pressure, no demands, only trust, and that trust had become her comfort. Her courage, her quiet strength. As she lay there, watching the first sunlight kiss his face, she realized something powerful. Love wasn't built in grand gestures. It was built in patience, in silence, in a hand that waited, not one that took. She smiled softly and closed her eyes again, whispering a prayer of gratitude she hadn't planned. For this peace, for this kindness, for this beginning. Moments later, Ayan's eyes opened. Still heavy with sleep, he looked at her and smiled, a sleepy, honest smile that made her heart flutter. "Good morning," he said gently. Anna blushed, turning her gaze away, unsure of what to say. "Good morning," she whispered back. He propped himself up on one elbow, his hair messy, his eyes warm. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded. "Yes. Better than I thought I could." "Good," he said softly. "That's all I wanted." He sat up and stretched, then turned to her again. "Would you like some tea?" Anna blinked. She hadn't expected that question. A husband making tea? For her? She nodded shyly, and Ayan smiled. "Stay here," he said. "You rest." "I'll bring it." As he stood and moved toward the small kettle on the table, Anna watched quietly. There was something deeply intimate about such a simple act. The way he poured water, the way he stirred it, the way he treated even this small moment with care. It wasn't romance the way movies showed it. It was gentleness, the kind that heals. When he returned, he handed her the cup. "Careful," he said, "it's hot." Anna took it with both hands, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. She sipped slowly. The taste was simple, but it filled her with something more than flavor. It filled her with belonging. They sat together on the bed, the morning light falling softly on their faces. For a while, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The silence between them was no longer awkward. It was peaceful. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. After a few minutes, Ayan broke the quiet. "Anna," he said gently, "I know last night was new, maybe even frightening. But I want you to know, love is not about one night. It's about every day after. It's about choosing each other again and again." Anna listened, her eyes misting with emotion. His words weren't poetry, but they felt truer than any poem she had ever read. "I've seen marriages," he continued, "where people live together but never really see each other. I don't want that for us. I don't want you to ever hide what you feel. Not fear, not sadness, not joy. I want us to talk, to grow, to be honest." His voice trembled slightly, as if he was speaking a vow straight from his heart. Anna looked down at her hands. "I didn't know love could sound like this," she whispered. Ayan reached out, gently lifting her chin so she'd meet his eyes. "That's because love isn't something you're told. It's something you feel, when you're safe, when you're seen, when you don't have to pretend." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not from fear. They were from recognition, from the quiet joy of being understood. Ayan smiled and brushed away a tear with his thumb. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" she asked softly. "Promise me you'll never silence your heart. That you'll always tell me when something hurts. When you're afraid. When you're happy. I want to share all of it with you." Anna nodded, unable to speak. In that moment, something inside her healed. A voice that had long been quiet finally found permission to speak. The rest of the morning flowed like a gentle song. They shared breakfast, laughed softly over little things, and spoke about dreams, hers, his, and theirs. Ayan told her he wanted her to chase her ambitions, to study, to work if she wished. "I didn't marry you to keep you in a cage," he said. "I married you because I wanted a partner, someone who walks beside me, not behind." The words struck deep. Anna had grown up believing that love meant sacrifice, that to be a wife was to serve silently. But Ayan's love felt different. It didn't shrink her. It expanded her. She smiled through quiet tears. "You make me feel like I matter." He took her hands again and whispered, "You always did. I just want to remind you." They spent the afternoon sitting by the window, watching the sky change colors. No rush, no demands. Only stillness filled with the promise of a future they would build together. Slowly, honestly, beautifully, that night, before sleep came again, Anna stood before the mirror. Her hair was loose, her face bare, her eyes soft with peace. She looked at herself and saw not the frightened bride from last night, but a woman who had crossed a threshold, not of a room, but of understanding. She smiled gently at her reflection. "This is love," she whispered. "Not fear, not duty, just love." And as she lay beside Ayan once more, wrapped not in expectation but in trust, she knew this truth. The first night wasn't the end of her innocence. It was the beginning of her awakening. Because love, real love, doesn't take. It gives. It listens. It waits. And in Ayan's quiet patience, Anna had found the kind of love that doesn't fade with time, the kind that grows deeper with every sunrise.